The Votani Empire had been the bullies of space for 3,000 years. Their ships looked like giant floating crystals, beautiful but deadly, and they moved through the galaxy like they owned everything. To them, humans were just another weak species that had barely figured out how to leave their own planet. The Vortani had watched Earth for decades, laughing at how slow and primitive these creatures seemed. Commander Hyunwoo Park was having his morning coffee on Earth Defense, Station Alpha, when everything changed. It was early morning, just past 3 in the morning Earth time, when the emergency alarms started screaming. His hands shook as he read the incoming messages. New Harmony, the farming colony where thousands of families grew food for the outer settlements, had stopped responding. Then Kepler Mining Station went dark. Finally, Titan's Edge Research Outpost sent one last desperate message before silence. Lieutenant Sujin Kim burst into the command room, her face pale with terror. She had been monitoring deep space communications all night, and what she found made her sick to her stomach. "Sir, they're all gone," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Complete orbital bombardment, nothing left but burning rocks." The holographic projector flickered to life, and suddenly they were face to face with their enemy. Admiral Veltar of the Vortani fleet appeared before them, his alien form both fascinating and terrifying. He had 6 glowing eyes arranged around his elongated head, and when he spoke, his voice carried the arrogance of someone who had never been challenged. "Primitive species," he said, each word dripping with contempt. "You have crawled into space where you do not belong. You have built your little colonies in systems we consider ours. These 3 destroyed worlds are your education. Learn from them. Remove yourselves from all star systems beyond your birth world, or we will remove you permanently." The message ended abruptly, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Captain Min-Ho Lee stood frozen at his station, staring at the empty space where the alien had appeared. His daughter Ji Young had been working as a botanist on New Harmony, helping develop new crops that could grow in alien soil. She had sent him a video message just yesterday, excited about a breakthrough with Earth vegetables. Now she was gone, along with everyone else he had sent to build humanity's future among the stars. Around him, his officers waited for orders that he couldn't give. The math was simple and terrifying. Earth's official military had 47 combat ships scattered across 6 star systems. The Vortani had just proven they could turn entire planets into ash without breaking a sweat. How do you fight an enemy that can kill millions with the push of a button? But Captain Lee didn't know everything about humanity's military. None of them did. In the deepest parts of space, far from any official records or alien sensors, other forces were already moving. Ships that existed in no government database were powering up their engines. Weapons that appeared on no inventory lists were being loaded and prepared. Soldiers who had supposedly retired years ago were putting on uniforms that bore no national flags. The Vortani had made their first mistake. They had studied Earth's public military records, counted their official ships, and measured their known weapons. They thought they understood exactly what humanity was capable of. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for war not against aliens, but against each other for over 50 years. Every nation, every corporation, every group with enough money and paranoia had built secret weapons and hidden fleets, just in case they needed to fight their neighbors. What the aliens didn't realize was that fear makes humans incredibly creative. And when you threaten to wipe out entire families, entire colonies of innocent people, you don't just make humans afraid, you make them angry. And angry humans, as the Vortani were about to learn, are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The war was about to begin, but it wouldn't be the quick lesson in obedience that Admiral Veltar expected. It would be something far worse for the Vortani, something that would change how every species in the galaxy thought about the small blue planet called Earth. Dr. Young-Soo Choi had been working in shadows for 15 years, building weapons that could bend space itself. His laboratory existed in a place that wasn't supposed to exist, funded by money that came from nowhere, developing technology that would make physicists weep with joy or terror. When the news came that his younger brother had died in the attack on Kepler Station, something inside him went cold and hard. He didn't cry, he didn't scream. He just walked back to his workbench and started building faster. His brother had been a mining engineer, someone who just wanted to dig valuable metals out of asteroids to help build humanity's future. Now, he was dead because some alien empire decided humans didn't deserve to exist beyond Earth. Young-Su's hands moved with practiced precision as he assembled the quantum displacement devices that could make objects appear and disappear at will. Each one he completed was another step toward making the Vortani pay for what they had done. All across human space, in laboratories hidden inside asteroids, in research stations disguised as garbage dumps, in facilities buried deep beneath the surfaces of dead moons, similar scenes were playing out. Engineer Hana Shin had spent 10 years developing stealth technology for corporations who wanted to spy on each other. Her drives could make a spaceship completely invisible to any sensor ever built. She had been proud of her work until the Iggy message came that her parents, her sister, and her 2 young nieces had all died when New Harmony burned. Now she worked around the clock, building dozens of her stealth drives, tears streaming down her face as she welded and programmed and tested. Colonel Jae Sung-han had supposedly retired 5 years ago after the corporate wars ended. Those wars had been brutal fights between different Earth companies, each one trying to control the most profitable mining rights and trade routes. Han had been one of the best special operations commanders in that conflict, someone who knew how to make entire enemy bases disappear without anyone knowing who had done it. When the Vortani attacks happened, he didn't hesitate. He activated communication codes that hadn't been used in years, reaching out to soldiers who had been living normal lives as farmers, teachers, and factory workers. Within hours, they were all back in uniform, ready to fight again. The Vortani were watching Earth's communications, feeling satisfied with what they saw. Human governments were sending angry messages that nobody cared about. Civilians were panicking and trying to flee to safer planets. The official military forces were moving their ships into defensive positions around Earth and Mars, exactly what you would expect from a weaker species that knew it was beaten. The aliens congratulated themselves on teaching these primitive creatures a lesson without having to destroy all of them, but the Vortani sensors couldn't detect the real messages that were flowing through space. Quantum transmissions were pulsing between objects that looked like space junk, abandoned mining equipment, and broken-down cargo ships. These messages were encrypted with codes that would take 1,000 years to break, and they were coordinating something the aliens never saw coming. Admiral Seo Hyun Yang stood in a place that officially didn't exist, looking out at a view that would terrify anyone who understood what they were seeing. Prometheus Base had been carved out of a rogue planet, a world that drifted through empty space without a sun, invisible to most sensors. The base was enormous, big enough to house a fleet of warships, and the people needed to operate them. Yang had been listed as retired in all official records, but retirement had just been her cover story while she commanded humanity's most secret military installation. Around her, the command center hummed with activity as officers coordinated. With similar bases scattered throughout human space, there were weapons platforms hidden inside what looked like dead asteroids. There were entire fleets of warships that had been built in secret shipyards and hidden in the dark spaces between stars. There were soldiers who had been training for decades for a war that everyone hoped would never come. Commander Ji-Hoon Kang approached her with a tablet full of status reports. Every secret facility, every hidden weapon, every sleeper agent was reporting the same thing. They were ready. Ready for a war that the Vortani had no idea was coming. Yang nodded slowly as she realized the scope of what humanity had built in. Secret. For 50 years, ever since humans had first left Earth, they had been preparing for war. Not against aliens because they didn't know aliens existed, but against each other. Every nation had built secret weapons because they were afraid of their neighbors. Every corporation had hidden fleets because they were afraid of their competitors. The paranoia and fear that had driven humanity to create these weapons was about to save them from extinction. The Vortani had made one fatal mistake. They had looked at humanity's official military and thought they understood what humans were capable of. They had never imagined that the real human military was hidden in the shadows, waiting for exactly this moment. What came out of the darkness around human space made the Vortani intelligence officers think their sensors were broken. For months, they had been watching what they thought were simple mining ships slowly moving between asteroids, collecting metals and ice. They had seen research stations that seemed to be studying plant growth and radiation effects. Everything looked exactly like what you would expect from a young species just learning to live in space. The Vortani had been completely wrong about everything. Those mining vessels were actually some of the most advanced spy ships ever built. They had been watching Vortani movements for years, learning their patrol routes, studying their technology, and mapping every single military installation in their empire. The research stations weren't growing vegetables or studying cosmic rays. They were housing weapons so powerful and dangerous that even humans had been afraid to build them until now. These weapons broke every rule of civilized warfare that most galactic species followed, but humans had never agreed to follow those rules, because no one had ever told them the rules existed. Captain Dong-Hyun Park had been waiting his entire career for this moment. His ship, the Silent Thunder, was one of 37 vessels that appeared on no official records anywhere. The ship could become completely invisible using quantum camouflage technology that bent light and sensor waves around it like water flowing around a rock. For 3 years, he and his crew had been practicing hit-and-run attacks against imaginary enemies, never knowing when they might need to use their skills for real. Now the moment had come. Park's ship materialized from nothingness just long enough to release its deadly cargo. Thousands of small hunter-killer drones poured out of the Silent Thunder like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. These weren't ordinary machines. They could repair themselves, build copies of themselves, and learn from every target they destroyed. Within minutes of being released, they spread out across Vortani space and began systematically tearing apart every sensor array and communication dish they could find. On Lunar Base 7, hidden beneath the surface of Earth's moon, Lieutenant Colonel Ye-Jin Song entered a code that had been waiting unused for 20 years. The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's ultimate backup plan, designed for the worst possible scenario. As her fingers moved across the control panel, weapon systems that had been sleeping began to wake up all across the solar system and beyond. What looked like communication satellites suddenly opened up to reveal planet-killing missiles with enough destructive power to crack worlds in half. Space stations that seemed to be doing harmless research transformed into massive gun platforms with weapons that could reach across entire star systems. Computer systems that had been deemed too dangerous for peacetime use came online, their artificial intelligence programs beginning to study Vortani fleet movements with the cold precision of machines designed for nothing but war. The first sign that something had gone wrong came when Vortani long-range sensors started going dark. One by one, their ability to see what was happening in space around them disappeared. Officers on Vortani ships watched in growing confusion as their displays showed nothing but static where there should have been clear images of human territory. Then their communication arrays started failing in sequence, each one destroyed by weapons that seemed to pass right through their supposedly impenetrable energy shields. Admiral Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, his 6 eyes glowing with anger and confusion as his officers scrambled to understand what was happening. For 3,000 years, Vortani technology had been superior to every other species they had encountered. Their shields could stop any weapon, their sensors could detect any enemy, and their ships were faster and more powerful than anything else in the galaxy. "How are they doing this?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the command center. "Our technology is superior. Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses." His officers had no answers. Their instruments showed human weapons that seemed to exist and not exist at the same time, passing through solid matter like ghosts, striking targets that should have been impossible to hit. The primitive species they had dismissed as barely worth their attention was using technology that their best scientists couldn't understand. Then every communication system in the Vortani fleet activated at once, whether the aliens wanted them to or not. A human face appeared on every screen throughout their empire. Admiral Seo Hyun Yang looked directly into the camera with the calm confidence of someone who held all the winning cards in a deadly game. "You wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy," she said. her voice carrying clearly across space to reach every Vortani ear. You thought you could destroy our colonies and frighten us into hiding behind our home planet like scared children. You were wrong about what we are, and you were wrong about what we are capable of. Yang paused, letting her words sink in as Vortani commanders realized that humans had somehow taken control of their entire communication network. Class is now in session, she continued, her expression never changing, and school is about to be very painful for everyone who thought humans were easy prey. The real war was about to begin, and the Vortani were starting to understand that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The war lasted exactly 72 hours, but those 3 days changed everything in the galaxy forever. When humanity finally struck back, it wasn't the kind of clean, military-focused war that the Vortani were used to fighting. The aliens expected humans to follow the same honorable rules that most civilized species observed. Target only military bases, avoid civilian areas, and fight with precision and restraint. They had no idea that humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of total war against each other, learning that sometimes the only way to win is to make your enemy hurt so badly they never want to fight again. Captain Woojin Kim commanded a squadron of 12 ships that moved through Vortani space like ghosts. His orders were simple but terrifying. Destroy everything that kept Vortani society running. Military bases were just the beginning. His ships hit trade stations where alien merchants bought and sold goods across the empire. They destroyed cultural centers where Vortani families went to learn about their history and art. They even targeted medical facilities, places that in any civilized war would be considered off-limits. The quantum tunneling weapons that Dr. Young-Soo Choi had spent 15 years perfecting turned out to be humanity's secret advantage. Vortani shields had been designed over thousands of years to stop energy beams, plasma bolts, and physical projectiles. But Choi's weapons didn't hit the shields at all. They passed right through them like the shields weren't even there, appearing inside Vortani's ships to explode from within. It was like trying to stop a ghost with a brick wall. Engineer Hana Shin's stealth drives proved just as devastating. Human. Ships would appear out of nowhere in the middle of Vortani fleet formations, fire everything they had, and then vanish again before the aliens could even target them back. Vortani commanders found themselves shooting at empty space, while their own ships exploded around them from attacks they couldn't see coming. What shocked the Vortani most was how ruthless humans could be when they were truly angry. Admiral Veltar sent desperate messages to human commanders, demanding that they follow the galactic rules of war and spare civilian targets. He couldn't understand why humans were attacking hospitals, schools, and art museums, instead of just fighting ship-to-ship battles like honorable warriors. Colonel Jae Sung-han's response was broadcast not just to the Vortani, but to every species in the galaxy that had communication equipment capable of receiving it. His face appeared on screens across multiple star systems, and his voice was cold with fury. "You want to talk about rules?" he asked, staring directly into the camera. "You destroyed 3 of our colonies without warning. You killed our farmers, our miners, our scientists, and our children. You made this personal when you decided our families didn't deserve to live. Now we're returning the favor, and you're going to learn exactly what humans do to anyone who threatens our people." The Vortani military had been designed for quick wars against weaker opponents. Their strategy had always been simple: show up with overwhelming force, destroy a few key targets, and accept the enemy's surrender within days. They had never fought an enemy that refused to give up, refused to follow any rules, and had been preparing for exactly this kind of total war for generations. Human cyber warfare specialists who had learned their skills in the cutthroat world of corporate espionage began tearing through Vortani computer networks like they were made of paper. These humans had spent years fighting digital battles against other humans, learning to break into the most secure systems and turn them against their owners. The Vortani computer networks, designed to resist conventional hacking attempts, couldn't handle attackers who had learned to fight dirty against opponents who were just as smart and ruthless as they were. Soon Vortani ships were receiving orders they hadn't sent. Their own weapons were firing on their own bases, and their navigation systems were sending them into asteroid fields and dead-end systems. The aliens watched in horror as their own technology betrayed them, controlled by human hackers who treated the alien networks like a playground. Commander Subin Lee coordinated the final assault on the Vortani homeworld from her command ship orbiting the planet. Below her, the surface was lit up with explosions as human forces systematically destroyed everything that made Vortani civilization function. Power plants, water treatment facilities, transportation networks, and communication hubs all went dark in sequence. At exactly 1847 hours, 71 hours and 43 minutes after the war had begun, Admiral Veltar's face appeared on Commander Lee's communication screen. The proud alien leader who had threatened to exterminate humanity now looked broken and desperate. "We surrender," he said, his 6 eyes dim with defeat. "Unconditional surrender. Please, stop the attacks. We yield completely to human authority." The war was over, but its effects would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity had proven that they were not the weak, primitive species that everyone had assumed. They were something far more dangerous, a species that knew how to fight total war, and wasn't afraid to use that knowledge when their survival was threatened. The quiet that came after humanity's victory was somehow more frightening than all the explosions and battles that had come before. Space, which had been filled with the sounds of war for 3 days, now felt empty and cold. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes after something terrible has happened, when everyone is too shocked to speak. The Vortani Empire, which had ruled 17 star systems for 3,000 years, was gone. In less than 4 days, they had been reduced from a galactic superpower to a broken collection of damaged worlds begging for mercy. Admiral Veltar, who had started this war by casually destroying human colonies, now stood before the ruins of his own government building, reading humanity's terms of surrender to anyone who was still alive to listen. The terms were harsh and complete. The Vortani would dismantle every military ship, every weapon, every defense system they had ever built. They would pay massive reparations to rebuild the human colonies they had destroyed. Most importantly, they would serve as a permanent reminder to the galaxy of what happened when you made humanity angry. Their once proud civilization would exist only at human mercy, rebuilding their shattered worlds under the watchful eyes of human occupation forces. But as the smoke cleared and the celebrations began on Earth, something darker started to emerge. People began asking uncomfortable questions about how humanity had been able to fight such a devastating war so quickly and effectively. Journalists started digging into government records, trying to understand where all those secret weapons had come from. Citizens discovered that their own governments had been building hidden military programs for decades, preparing for wars that nobody had expected to fight. The revelation was shocking. For 50 years, while ordinary people had been working normal jobs and raising their families, their leaders had been secretly developing planet-killing weapons, building invisible fleets, and training soldiers for total warfare. The money for these programs had come from their taxes, but no one had been told what it was really being used for. Parents realized that their children had been growing up in a world where their own governments were constantly preparing to destroy other human civilizations. Even more disturbing was how easily humanity had embraced the brutal tactics of total war. When the Vortani had attacked human colonies, killing innocent civilians, humanity's response had been to do exactly the same thing back to them, but worse. Human forces had deliberately targeted alien hospitals, schools, and cultural centers. They had shown no mercy and followed no rules beyond winning at any cost. General Tai Ho Yun found himself in command of occupied Vortani space, responsible for governing millions of alien survivors whose entire civilization had been shattered in 3 days. He walked through the ruins of Vortani cities, seeing alien children who looked at human soldiers with the same fear that human children might have once felt toward monsters in bedtime stories. There was no joy in this victory, no sense of justice being served. Only the grim satisfaction of knowing that no one would underestimate humanity again. The victory had cost humanity something important. They had discovered that when pushed to the edge of extinction, They were capable of becoming something terrifying. The species that had once dreamed of exploring the stars and meeting alien friends had instead become the galaxy's newest nightmare. Dr. Ver. So young Han spent her days monitoring communications from across the galaxy, listening to how other alien species talked about Earth now that the war was over. What she heard made her feel sick. Other civilizations, who had barely noticed humanity before, were now having emergency meetings about the human problem. They spoke about Earth in whispers, sharing stories about the species that could destroy entire empires in less than a week. The aliens weren't talking about humanity with respect or admiration. They were talking about humans the way people might discuss a dangerous predator that had moved into their neighborhood. Some alien governments were quietly moving their colonies away from human space. Others were building new weapons, just in case they ever had to fight humanity themselves. A few were even discussing whether they should attack Earth before humans could attack them. Humanity had won its place among the galactic powers, but it wasn't the kind of membership they had once dreamed about. Instead of being welcomed as peaceful explorers or valuable trading partners, humans were now the species that other civilizations warned their children about in scary stories. Parents across the galaxy would put their young ones to bed with warnings about what happened to species that bothered the terrible humans from Earth. The Vortani survivors, slowly rebuilding their broken worlds under human supervision, served as a living reminder of humanity's capacity for destruction. Every alien diplomat who visited the former Vortani Empire could see exactly what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The message was clear. Earth might look like a small, harmless planet, but the species that lived there were capable of ending entire civilizations when they felt threatened. In the end, humanity had achieved something that would echo across the galaxy for thousands of years. They had won not just a war, but a reputation that would make other species think twice before threatening human colonies. The price of that victory was the loss of humanity's innocence and the knowledge that when survival was at stake, humans could become the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the universe would never be the same.